One other note on sort of what's going on at the moment at CREA. We have a new book, The Snowy Day at Our Story Walk. It's right behind our office at 179 Neptune in Brunswick. And it's very appropriate for a day like today when we're getting snow. And Jenny, our camp director, is getting busy planning for summer camp. We're really excited about that. We know that summer camp is going to be something that children really need. And our camp, as many of you probably know, is all outdoors. And it's after a whole year of limited access to school and friends. We're really excited about creating a safe, wonderful experience for them. So details about camp will be up on our website in the next month or so. So on to Jules. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and Jules, let you share yours. And just a quick introduction for Julie. Julie Olson is the co-founder of Zero Waste Maine. She is an experienced educator and librarian who shares her suburban home with her husband and son and beloved rescue pets. A dedicated supporter of community-supported agriculture and shopping locally, Julie loves finding nearby resources that support zero waste and spreading the word with others. Julie has reduced her household's trash by more than 85%. So take it away, Jules. Let me get you, let's see. We can get Jules up on the screen.
Well, as long as you can still see me, this works for me.
Let's see, I'm not seeing your video. Oh, here we go. Let's see. There you are. Okay, take it away.
Okay, great. So, well, first of all, thank you so much to CREA. Thank you for having me. I have been to your facility and it's gorgeous. You guys have a beautiful place. So thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here. And this is the first workshop I've actually done for Zero Waste Me since the pandemic started. So this is a great way to sort of welcome back into the community. So first, I just wanted to let you know like what our organization is. So Zero Waste Me was founded by myself and a friend, Suzanne Balbo. We were having breakfast one morning and just started talking about how we're both pursuing zero waste, and neither one of us had said that to the other before. And so we said, you know, it's so frustrating that there's all these great resources online and there's lots of great books, but there isn't anything that's really about Maine. It's hard to find information about Maine in particular. And so we're like, we're educators, we should make this information available. And so we created this website, zerowasteme.org, which has resources that can be useful to anyone, but is specifically designed for folks in Maine. So one of the projects that we're working on right now that we're really excited about, we're partnering with Vanessa Berry from Eco Maine, who, as part of her capstone project for her graduate program, put together a much better version than ours of a map of Maine retailers that offer zero waste options. So that's on our that's going to be on our website soon, and we'll also have an interview with her there. So make sure to check out our website for that and for everything else that's great on there. So on to the let's see. There we go. Okay. So
sorry to interrupt you. People are just saying that it's a little hard to hear you. I'm just wondering if you could.
Let's see. Can you hear me better if I come closer like this?
Maybe a little bit better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've gotten that feedback before. I don't know what the problem is with the microphone on this. Yeah, so I got interested in zero waste many years ago, but really started in earnest about 5 years ago to really try to reduce my household trash. And so when we moved into this house here, we inherited this enormous trash can. Like, I think probably my entire family could stand inside this trash can comfortably. And we would fill it up every week. Like every week without fail, we'd bring our trash can down to the end of the driveway and you know, the dump truck would come and like pick it up and take it away. And I just said, you know, this has to change. We can't keep doing this. This isn't sustainable, you know, for us, for the planet. So really started to make a lot of changes over time. And now we're creating about half a bag of trash a week. And you know, it still feels like a lot of trash. It still feels like a lot of stuff, but from where we've come so far. And I feel like what we're doing right now is at a pretty sustainable level that we as a family will be able to keep going with this level for a long time. And so here is basically how I did it. And so I just want to say, first of all, that recycling doesn't count. So recycling is not the answer. Recycling is actually kind of a problem in that we feel like if we're recycling it, we're not throwing it away. And so we don't have to worry about the things that go into the recycle bin. But the reality is that not all things that we put into the bin get recycled into something new. And a lot of the things that do get recycled into something new, often that is the end of their life. So, you know, when you're recycling plastic, for example, one of the products it gets turned into most frequently is sort of that composite lumber that's made up of like plastic materials that last for a really long time. But it can't be recycled after that. So it can get recycled one time and that's the end. Another issue with recycling is that we used to send a lot of our recycling to China, and then China really tightened up its restrictions on contamination, which also includes just like items being mixed in together. And so we weren't able to send our recycling to China anymore. So we've got a lot of recycling sitting here. The sad truth of it is that a lot of it does end up going to the landfill. So I just don't want anyone to feel like if they're reducing their trash, but they're, you know, creating a whole lot more recycling, or maybe they're recycling every single thing, you know, that's not really letting you off the hook. So just be aware of that. So before we get started, I just wanted to have some guidelines. So one of the things that we talk about a lot with Zero Waste Me is that you shouldn't really strive for perfection, right? So don't let perfect be the enemy of good. So if you're feeling like you're not doing a good job, and so you might as well just give up, which is, I feel, a point that a lot of folks get to be with zero waste, don't let that hold you back. And the second thing is really to be gentle on yourself and with others. You know, it can be a big change, especially at the beginning. It can be mentally exhausting. You're having to think about things that you've never really had to think about, and think about solutions to things that are very contrary to the entire structure of our society. So it's hard. And, you know, in my household, I am obviously very enthusiastic about zero waste, but my husband is not. And so if I was, you know, badgering him all the time, I think it would become a big fight. And we did have several big fights about it when I really started getting on board, because I wanted him to be more on board too. But, you know, I want everyone to approach this with a sense of compassion about themselves and others and where they are on their journey. So just be gentle, and have an open mind. So something that might seem shocking or impossible to you right now, like 6 months from now or 5 years from now, might seem like the most natural thing in the world. Or something that seems, you know, just too challenging or whatever, you might be able to do it. And you don't have to buy your way into zero waste. So I follow a lot of zero waste accounts on Instagram. I find it very inspiring, but I also find it to be very consumer driven. And that, you know, you're not doing zero waste unless you have like a bamboo silverware set that you keep with you or whatever it is. Most of the time you will have things in your own home already that are all that you need. So those are the guidelines. And so while we're making lists, I wanted to talk about the 6 R's of zero waste. You know, we've all heard of the 3 R's, recycle, reduce, reuse. But with zero waste, there's 6. So the first one is refuse. So say no. There's a lot of things that we just don't need, you know, whether it's free samples at the grocery store and they're all in like those little individual plastic cups, or whether it's like, you know, just like a frivolous purchase or whatever it is. Most of the time you don't really need those things, so you can just say no. Or if someone's offering you paper napkins and you have your cloth napkin with you, you can just say no. Reduce, consume only what you need. So a lot of the time, you know, before I started really getting serious about zero waste, I found that we had a lot of food waste in our household. Like we would buy more than we could eat while it was still fresh, and then we ended up having to like toss some avocados or whatever it was. So that's like a real concrete example of just consuming what you need. Reuse, buy secondhand, repurpose, rehome. And I'm going to talk about these kind of things a lot more as we go through the presentation, but this is a really important part to think about, like, where are your things coming from? Can I repurpose something that I'm already using for something else into this new task? And sometimes that can be a challenge to sort of have that imagination to think about, like, what can I use that isn't the thing that I just want to go out and buy that would make my life easier? What do I have that I could use instead? Repair is my favorite. I've really gotten into fixing everything. I just find that really fun, and there's a lot of things that can be fixed that you might not even think that you could fix, and the internet is wonderful for that. Recycle, you know, as we talked about, like this is sort of like the last resort. If you can't do anything else with it, maybe it's time to recycle it. And rot, to compost what you can. And, you know, we'll talk about all of these some more, but I just want to touch briefly on the rot. So depending on where you are in the state or the country, you know, with virtual events, people will come from all over. You might be able to have, you know, a backyard compost bin. Maybe you have a small compost bin out on a balcony, or maybe there's like a municipal or private compost company that will come around and collect where you are. So you just kind of have to look into what your local options are there. So if everyone's ready, we're going to start diving into the practical tips. So a lot of people ask, where should I start with zero waste? Like, what's the first thing I should do? And the first thing you should do is look in your own trash. You know, what is it that you're throwing away? What I throw away might be very different than what you throw away. So really just literally take a look in your trash and see what are the things that you're throwing away. And so I've organized this presentation essentially into 2 pieces: things at home and things out and about. And it seems kind of funny in the pandemic to talk about out and about since we're mostly home, but eventually we will be back out again. So it's still useful information. So create a zero waste kit and keep it with you. So a zero waste kit can be whatever it is that you need and use when you're out in the world. So I just wanted to show my lunch bag from yesterday. I know this is kind of funny, but I was unpacking it today and I thought that this seemed relevant. So this is my, I pack my own lunch when I go to work. And in it, you can see I've sort of got this like mishmash of things. So I keep it all in a repurposed plastic bag. And then I've got some metal tiffins, and I've got a mason jar. But this is sort of the exact same stuff that I would have with me, even if I wasn't bringing my old lunch, like back in the day when you could go out to eat or whatever. I would still have some food containers, and I always have a cloth napkin, which comes in handy for all sorts of things. So you can use it, you know, as a napkin, but you can also use it to like dry your hands, like if you're out in the world instead of using paper towels or whatever. I keep some silverware in here. If you're a straw user, you can keep a metal straw with you. Whatever it is that you use out in the world, keep a reusable set with you and keep it practical. So you might think that there's like 1,000 things, you know, that you would use out in the world,
but it might be like an enormous kit that you end up leaving in the car because it's not practical to take it around with you. And so then you never have it when you need it. And I say this as a person who did this exact thing at the beginning. So try to keep it a manageable size. And I keep mine a manageable size by keeping it in this like very small, I don't know if you can even tell, it's like not that big, tote bag that I keep right inside my bag with me. And I really wanted to emphasize to bring reusable bags everywhere. And again, for like another prop, I just wanted to show you. So I have, this is the bag that I keep all my stuff in, and I keep this with me pretty much every day. And in it, I've got a couple different, like you can see, I've got like a big collection of reusable bags here, and I use them all the time. And by having them with me all the time, I've really reduced the number of disposable bags that I've had to use. And you end up kind of needing bags all the time, like whether you're, you know, going to the library or the grocery store or the hardware store or whatever. It's really nice to have those extra bags with you. And I'm not going to get super specific about everything, but I did want to use you know, bags as a very specific example of how individual actions really add up to enormous numbers when you look at all of us together. So I love this little graphic here. And so, yeah, individual actions really do add up. So another specific thing is to find a reusable water bottle that works for you. And make sure you use it all the time. And so a water bottle isn't just for water, depending on what you have. You can use it for hot beverages or cold beverages or ice or whatever you need. But yeah, keep it with you. And I've had this one for like 15 years and it's still going strong. I'm gonna have this thing forever. And also find a reusable cup that works for you. So I have, this is mine, which is also very old, and this was secondhand. So I've had, again, this thing is gonna last forever. And these work particularly well for me because they're tall and skinny, so I can put them in the pockets of my bag. But you know, find whatever works for you. It doesn't have to be like glamorous or pretty, it just has to work. And so at home, the first thing that we really got rid of that made a really big difference was paper goods. And I didn't even realize how much we were going through until we stopped going through them. And all of a sudden, the volume of our trash was so much smaller. So, you know, cloth napkins, reusable cloths for cleaning, anything that you use once and throw away. Think about how you can replace that with something else. And it doesn't have to be fancy. Like all of the cloth napkins that I have are all ones that I got from Goodwill. So none of them match. I consider it charming. It works out fine. And so jars of hankies everywhere. So I particularly recommend this book, Zero Waste Home by Bea Johnson. It can be a little aspirational, especially the home design, but there's a lot of really practical tips. And one of the really practical tips that I got was jars of hankies. So it turns out we used to go through a lot of like tissues, like disposable tissues, Kleenex. And then I just got like a bunch of jars and filled them up with hankies. And some of them are like actual hankies, like here's an actual hanky. And some of them are, let's see, here's one, like old t-shirts and things. Like they make really great hankies. And it's also a good way to reuse those things after they have reached the end of their life. So yeah, that's a really easy one. Go home, do that one today, and you can thank me later. So food is like, I think, one of the trickiest things. Everything is packaged. Everything has multiple layers of packaging. There's a plastic bag inside a paper box, which is shrink wrapped with more plastic. But one of the areas that you can often find unpackaged food is unpackaged produce. And the reason I say here, prepare to be perpetually frustrated, is I find, you know, a produce vendor may one week have an unpackaged product and the next week it's in a plastic bag. And so I have done like very frustrated trips to like multiple grocery stores just looking for something that wasn't in plastic. And you don't have to go that far, but there are a lot of unpackaged produce options, which is great. And I also want to give a quick plug too to community supported agriculture. So support your local farmers. There's lots of great ways to do that at farmers markets or co-ops. CSAs, which are like shares that you buy ahead of time, which help fund the farmer through the season. And then you get like a box of produce every week or every other week, depending on what the structure is. Keep that money local. Buy from bulk bins. Now, this was one that I feel like has a little bit of a learning curve to it. And for me, what I started out with, which is sort of what everyone does, where you bring these like empty jars to a place where you can buy from bulk bins. Like the jars did not work for me very well. And so I'll show you what I ended up doing. So I keep it all in here because this is like the hippiest basket that I own, and zero waste is like the hippiest thing that I do.
Hey, good afternoon. Oops, I am.
That's okay.
Now I can say good afternoon. How are you doing?
Hello. And so I keep all sorts of
Doing good. How are you?
I am well.
everyone
I
can just
think everything is organized and ready to go. How are you feeling? Are you?
hello, hi. Can you please make sure
Sorry.
to mute your audio out there in internet land? Okay. So I keep lots of different bags in here and lots of different sizes. And I also keep some pieces of just like large flat fabric, which is handy for something that doesn't fit in the bag. Like if you get bread or like awkward produce or whatever. So I keep those all in here. And I do keep a couple of jars in here for liquid bulk buying, like soap or honey or maple syrup or whatever. But I mostly use bags, which works out a lot better for me. And so just to really quickly tell you how this process works, you go up to the counter and you have them weigh your jar, and then they write on the jar how much it weighs, and then you fill it up with whatever you want. And so then when you go back to the counter to pay, they tear out the weight of whatever it is you've purchased. And so one of the things that I do like about some of these pre-made bags that people bought for me is that they have the tear weight right on the tags or printed on the bag. So those are really nice, but you don't have to necessarily use, you know, these cloth bags. Like, so if you have lots of paper bags at home, like I know I have a ton of these, they just accumulate. You can use those too, and they work great. And then you can compost the bag when it's at the end of its life. So that is how I buy from bulk bins. And a lot of places that have bulk bins right now, because of the pandemic, you tell the person who's working there what you need, and then they go and get it for you. So it's a little different right now, but it's still available at a lot of places. Oh, and real quickly, while we're talking about food, you know, I talked about how sometimes like when you're having to think of a solution at the beginning, it seems like so much work to have to process it. And then once you come up with an idea, it seems so simple and straightforward. So I'm a big tea drinker. So I just wanted to show you like how I've sort of zero waste my tea drinking. So I have, this is my jar full of loose tea, like right here. And then I have a couple different things that I use. Sometimes I use like a French press to make my tea, which works out great. I got this one at Goodwill. And I also really like these little like sieve type ones that you just put in the cup like this, and you can take it out when you're ready. A lot of tea bags actually have plastic in them, which I didn't know until the last few years. So that's been a way for me to further eliminate plastic and further eliminate waste. And it's an easy one. And also another nice zero waste hack are beeswax wraps, which you can use to like wrap your food. Like you can use it as a cover on top of something. You can also use it instead of like saran wrap where you put something inside it and then like ball it all up. They work really well, and you can make them yourself pretty easily. And there's instructions for how to do that on our website if you wanted to try a little DIY. But honestly, most of the time I just use like food containers. So like we have like takeout, like the plastic takeout containers that we got from doing takeout. And we just keep using those over and over, and we use them until they break. So, you know, it doesn't have to be like a specialized item. It can be whatever you have. Toiletries are a really fun and easy thing to think about when you're going zero waste. And if you look around your bathroom, basically everything in it can be, there is a zero waste option. So there's like shampoo bars and conditioner bars. So that's a really good option. And one of the things that I think about a lot is how can I make this item last a long time? So I like have a little soap thing that I use for this, but that's something I think about a lot. Like, how can I make this item last as long as possible? So that is a way of reducing your waste as well. These used to be the standard, and then they went out of style and were replaced by disposable items. But this is a reusable safety razor, and so this particular one works by you unscrew the top and then you replace the blade and then you screw it back in. There's different styles, and this can save you a ton of waste if you're a person who shaves. And so I also have like the shaving brush, and I have a shaving soap. And so those are also ways to reduce some waste. And again, with like the idea of like being a steward of your items, I have this like stand, which helps protect it all and helps it dry out better. So there's no metal corrosion or anything like that. You can make a lot of your own things. So you can make your own toothpaste and deodorant. There's lots of different things that you can sort of DIY, and those are really fun to do. So that can be like a good way to sort of enter into zero waste with those kind of products. Also makeup, I'm not a makeup person, but there are a lot of really great zero waste makeup options out there that either come in packaging that is all glass or metal that can be repurposed afterward or can be refilled by the manufacturer. And there's also refill options on things like shampoo and conditioner too. There's a lot of different companies now that offer packaging that you can send back and they refill and send it back to you, or you can refill it at a zero waste store that offers those kinds of things. So a couple of like TMI areas at the very end, you can zero waste your period. So there are menstrual cups that you can use, there's period underwear, there's reusable pads. All of those can help reduce the waste that you're creating in your personal needs. You can also think about using a bidet. And so a bidet doesn't have to be like a whole standalone piece of furniture. They have kinds now that you can install right into a regular toilet. And it can help you reduce or completely eliminate your use of toilet paper. So that's pretty cool. Repair and maintain. So, I said that we were going to be talking about all these things in a little bit more detail. With repair and maintain, if you haven't heard of it already, there's a movement called Right to Repair, which specifically is about electronics, but other things as well. And the idea behind it is that a lot of companies have sort of become very proprietary about repairing items. So like cell phones, vehicles, tractors, there's all kinds of things that have fallen within this where manufacturers want to prevent individuals and independent repair shops from repairing items. And so this right to repair legislation is trying to open that up so that independent businesses and consumers can repair their own items themselves. So if you haven't heard of that, I recommend Googling it. It's very interesting. But another thing that I try to think about when I'm purchasing new items, or in my case, mostly secondhand items, but new to me, is can this be repaired? And is there an option for something that could be repaired instead if the item can't be repaired? So like, this example here of shoes. So for example, like a pair of athletic sneakers, might be something that would be very difficult, perhaps even possible to have repaired. But a pair of leather shoes or leather boots, that's something that can be repaired, many times over the course of, decades, and can last a very long time. And appliances can be another very tricky thing to try to repair nowadays. They sort of sell whole things as components. So I had a vacuum several years ago, and there was one small component in the motor that needed to be replaced, and you could not. Like, the piece wasn't available. You had to buy the entire motor, which was very frustrating. So now when we're purchasing sort of larger items like that, we really look to see, is this something that can still be repaired by an individual? Is it repairable at all? And those are good questions to ask. So gift wrapping, I had found that around the holidays, particularly after like gift giving holidays, we had a ton of trash because we had all of this like packaging from the items and like gift wrapping itself. Like, it would just be like multiple trash bags of just wrapping paper. And a lot of wrapping paper can't be recycled depending on the recycling limitations of where you live. But a lot of them have like finishers and inks that or plastic components like sparkles or whatever, glitter, that means it can't be recycled with most paper. So some really easy options for that. So on, you can see on the one side, the cloth wrapping. This is a Japanese style of writing called furoshiki, which I also recommend looking into when you have some time. It looks complicated, but it's actually quite simple to do, and it looks really beautiful. And one of the cool trademarks of it is that they usually have like a handle. So you can see in the three next to each other there, each one of them has like a knot in a place, and that allows you to pick it up and carry it, which is great if you're giving somebody like a bottle of wine or something like that. And the other option with gift wrapping is to repurpose materials. So all year long, I collect anything that might be like attractive for gift wrapping. So for me, that means like bits of string and ribbon, lots of brown paper, anything like that. And then there's a way that you can wrap it also that doesn't involve tape. You kind of like tuck the paper into itself. There's lots of good videos on YouTube about how to do that, but you can also just tie it up with string the old-fashioned way. And again, you're not having to use tape that way. But while we're talking about gifts too, gift giving, something that my family has moved toward, like not with my young son, but with the adults in the family, we try to give either secondhand or handmade items, which is one way to reduce both packaging and like additional consumer need. You could also try giving experiences instead of gifts. So like gift certificates to places, or, taking somebody to the theater or something like that. And one family I know for Christmas this last year, they all donated to a particular institution. So there's lots of ways that you can also give gifts that don't create any waste at all. For cleaning, there's so many specialized cleaning products, and so many of them are both redundant and terrible for your health. You can clean pretty much anything with soap, vinegar, and baking soda. In those combinations with hot water, especially with a little bit of like sunshine and fresh air, almost anything can be cleaned with those things. And so I wanted to say, so when I started on my zero waste journey, I was still in this idea that there were some things that I needed to buy and that I wanted to replace plastic items that I already had. And so I went and bought like a metal bucket because that seemed like a very zero wastey thing for me. But of course, the metal bucket like started rusting on the bottom and wasn't good for what I had bought it for, which was cleaning and like my compost bin and stuff. But I have old plastic buckets, and those work just fine for what I need. So again, you do not have to go out and purchase your way into a zero waste practice. So our clothing and laundry is another source of a lot of waste, which might not be something that you necessarily think about. So microplastics are tiny bits of synthetic material that shed off your clothing in the laundry. And so all of those microplastics get washed out with the water into the city water or into your septic system or wherever your water goes. There's all these bits of microplastics. Microplastics are often part of the conversation when we're talking about plastic pollution in oceans as well. And they're so small that a lot of like municipal filters can't catch all of them. So I really try to think about, the whole life cycle of an item. So if I'm purchasing an item, I think like, how is this going to wash? How is it going to wear? Am I going to be able to repair it? And when it's at the end of its life cycle, what will I be able to do with it? Will it have to go in the trash? Like, will I be able to, what will I have to do with it? And the ultimate for me is if I can compost the item. So if I can, use it for rags, and then when the rags are done, like compost it, I feel like that's a successful item. So Maine is very dry and cold and staticky. So there are compostable dryer sheets. Some folks have really good luck just using dryer balls. Dryer balls look like little tennis balls. They're felted wool, and they help your clothes dry faster, first of all, but they also help reduce static. My house, my clothes, everything is very dry. So I still have to use the compostable dryer sheets in tandem with the dryer balls. Line drying is also a good alternative to using the dryer. So maybe you live out in the country where you have enough space for a clothesline. I live in the suburbs, but I do have like a clothing rack that I can just set up in my bedroom and dry things there. There's also some things that don't really need to be like dried in a traditional way. So one of the things that we've gotten rid of over time are the plastic liners behind a shower curtain. So we just use like a cloth shower curtain, and every now and then we wash it, and then we just hang it up while it's still wet, and it air dries right there. You can also ask yourself, how often do I really need to wash this? Like some things, maybe you've worn like a pair of pants a few times, but they're not dirty. Like you can keep using it. I think sometimes we just get in like the mental habit of thinking like, if I've worn something like once or twice, it's ready to be washed. But if it's not dirty, it doesn't need to be washed. You can wait until it's dirty. So compost, I do have a compost pile in my backyard, and it's great. So I can compost so many random things that might otherwise end up in the trash. So, the contents of my vacuum cleaner, so like all the dog hair, that sort of thing. I do a lot of like crafty stuff, and I have like little bits of unusable thread that are just a natural product of crafting. As long as I'm using like cotton or linen or something like that, that can all go in the compost. Of course, like kitchen scraps, like peelings and that sort of thing, after they're, maybe you've been able to use them for stock, maybe you can't use them at all, maybe they're like cucumber peelings or something like that. That can all go in the compost, as well as yard waste. You can also compost like paper and other items like that. I have had difficulty like with shredded paper. I had read that if you shred the paper, it will compost a lot faster, but then I found that the shredded paper blew all over the yard, so I don't necessarily recommend that. Like just rip it up into smallish pieces and then put it in. So use what you already have. I talked about a couple of different examples where I felt like I needed to buy something in order to make something work, but I already had something that worked perfectly well. Sometimes it's something as obvious as like an old plastic bucket that you have versus a new metal bucket, but sometimes it can be something that like maybe you wouldn't necessarily think of it like that. And I feel like there have been so many examples of this, and I can't think of a single one right now. But like, for example, maybe you need a a travel soap dish. You have plenty of dishes like around the house that you could use. Like you could use a food storage dish, you know, like there are things like that that you could repurpose. You can also ask yourself, do I really need to own that? Is it something that you can borrow or maybe rent instead? So I feel like there's such a culture of independence that we have where we don't want to borrow things from other people and we feel like we need to have our own. But maybe you only use a chainsaw once every 2 years to cut down large limbs. If you're having your own chainsaw, you're having to purchase that chainsaw, you're having to maintain it, and maybe you could just borrow one from a neighbor, or you could rent it for the weekend or something like that. And I love this adage, you know, this old adage, use it up, wear it out, make it do, or do without. But I want to add an asterisk to the end of that, like make it do or do without, unless you can borrow it or you can get it secondhand. Because I think if we're trying to deny ourselves and that we're really trying to, you know, live sort of an austere version of zero waste, you might get tired of it. It might not be something that you can maintain for the long term. And, you know, there's like a popular saying that's going around right now from Zero Waste Chef, which is something to the effect of, we don't need one person doing zero waste perfectly. We need everyone doing zero waste imperfectly. So you need to find sort of like what works for you. And sometimes, you know, doing without might be a little too much. So I had one more thing I wanted to show you, which was related to the compost thing. So this is a cool thing that I didn't know about until fairly recently, but I wanted to show you my pillow. So this is my pillow. It's like a sack of cotton, and inside it is buckwheat hulls. So it's just the hulls from buckwheat, and I have some right here to show you. I don't know if this is going to be able to really see it on the screen, but they're like tiny, they look like tiny little hollow seeds. And so, you know, things like pillows are often either, you know, a synthetic material like a foam or synthetic down, or they're down, which is maybe something that you know, you can't use because you have allergies, or like they wear out fast, or maybe it's too expensive to get down that's also in a you know, a natural covering. Buckwheat hulls is a really great alternative. It doesn't smell like anything. It's super comfortable. It might take a little bit of getting used to, just because it's different than a regular pillow, but it's great. And then at the end of its lifespan, when you are ready to get more buckwheat hulls, you can just throw your old buckwheat hulls in the compost pile. Like throw a pillow in the compost pile. That's pretty cool. So I know that this was a lot, and you may be doing a lot of them already, but I just wanted to say, don't get overwhelmed. You know, I think this is like zero waste is something that works best if you go at it slowly. Like if you try to go in and change everything all at once, first of all, you're just going to feel like a failure all the time, because there's always things that you end up having to, that you feel like you're being wasteful about. But it also might be just exhausting, you know, exhausting for yourself, exhausting for the people around you, because you're just like fixated on this. So really try to think of it as like a marathon. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's going to be something that you would be doing, that you'll be doing for the rest of your life. So, you know, I love this, this saying, the man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones. So start with those small stones and then build up. And then before you know it, you're going to be carrying away the mountain. And also just get inspired by going after low-hanging fruit. And so whatever that is for you, so like maybe you use a lot of paper towels at home. So instead of using paper towels, switch to rags. Or maybe you use like a K-cup, like switch to, you know, maybe like a French press or something else, that like a percolator or something like that. Something that like you use that makes a lot of trash, and something that you use every day, like something that you'll have like this moment every day where you're like, aha, here I am using a zero waste thing. Maybe it's a bamboo toothbrush, maybe it's DIY deodorant, whatever it is. It's going to help you get inspired, and you're going to see a big change in your trash, especially if you're doing something that makes a lot of trash. and it's going to motivate you to keep going. And so something that I'll also say is to find what works for you. So not everything has worked for me. You know, I have very dry skin. And so especially in the winter, I'm not able to use like my shampoo bar. I have to use like a medicated shampoo. I have to use a lot of moisturizer. So these things are not zero waste. They come in plastic bottles, and these are the ones I have to use. But that's okay. You know, the other 6 months of the year, I'm using my shampoo bar and like DIY products. But also I feel like you get a free pass for anything that's related to your physical health. You know, if it's medical, if it's something that you need for your health, don't worry about that. But there are other things, like maybe you get a bidet with like the best of intentions, but then you hate the bidet. That's okay. Find something else. What are the things that are working for you? And remember, compromise is okay. It's okay if you're not 100% perfect at zero waste. Just do the best you can. And the more you reduce, you know, the better you're doing. And so also stay inspired. And I know that that can seem a little like woo-woo, but it's true. So whatever it is that sort of keeps you going. So for me, I really like, you know, I talked about the Instagram accounts that I follow. It's like, I don't want to buy those things that those people have, but I'm just like, oh, it's so beautiful. Like, you know, I find that inspiring. And find a community. And maybe that's just one other person like Suzanne and I did, where we started talking about it and we're able now to, you know, bounce ideas and solutions off each other, which is great. But find someone that you can talk to about it. And I have here at the bottom, being less than perfect doesn't make you a fraud. And I say that because I often feel like a fraud. You know, my house still makes trash. I still make trash. And when this went like before Suzanne and I made Zero Waste Maine, before we started talking about it, I had been trying to find a speaker at the library that I was working at the time, someone who would come and do a presentation on Zero Waste Maine. And I reached out to all these people who I had found through like newspapers. There had been like articles about them that they had been doing zero waste. And all of them said, oh, you know, I just kind of fell off the bandwagon. Like, you know, I've gone back to some of my old habits. Like, I don't think I can. And, you know, there's that sense of like, if you're not doing it perfectly, that you're not doing zero waste. And I think you just have to embrace that there's still going to be some things that you're not able to get rid of. Everything in our society is structured to make trash. So just do the best you can. And so I just really quickly want to say that zero waste has also saved me a lot of money. And here are some of the various ways, but in the interest of time, because we're running up at the end and I do want to make sure that people have time to ask questions, I just wanted to quickly touch on zero waste in the pandemic. That on the right-hand side, there are some things that make it easier. We're not traveling, we're not shopping, we're not eating out, we're not using a lot of single-use stuff because we're not out in the world. But there are some challenges too. Like we've certainly had more food packaging because, you know, just how we're having to buy food these days is very different. Things are wearing out faster because we're using them a lot more. We need different items, like maybe you need an office chair or something like that. But whatever it is, you know, we're all in it together. It's hard for everyone, but, you know, just do the best you can. So I wanted to open up the floor to folks to see, you know, if they have any questions, if you have any suggestions about things that have worked really well for you, maybe discussion about how the pandemic has affected your zero waste practice. I'd like to hear all your thoughts.
There's a bunch of good stuff in the chat box. Let me run some of those. Let me get to the bottom of here. And a lot of good suggestions, but let's do the questions first. There's a question about composting. Susan says, composting sounds very easy, but in my experience, there are challenges in doing it effectively. Do you have any do's and don'ts or other guidelines?
Sure. So I do like lazy man's compost. I have 2 compost bins right next to each other, and I just put everything in the compost, like one compost bin for like a year or 2, and then I just ignore it. Like I never do like the turning thing, like I never soak it with the hose. I just let the rain come and like make it wet, and then I go for the other one. And by the time the one is full, the other one has like reduced down to like a third of what it was, and it's ready to be used in my garden. So that's how I do it. If you're in a more urban area where you don't have like the space or the ability to do an outside compost like that, where you can sort of ignore it, there are smaller options. You can also think about doing like worm composting, which is a great alternative, especially if you're in like an apartment or something. You can literally have like your worm box like tucked under your bed. Like they don't smell. I know it sounds crazy, but again, keep an open mind. So that's a really great alternative for small spaces too.
Let's see. Someone wants to know if there is an online place where it's possible to share ideas and product suggestions. Is that something that takes place at Zero Waste?
You know, we don't have a forum per se, but all the pages are open for comments. So you can always post comments there, but that's a great, I'm gonna make a note of that. Maybe some sort of like pinnable post or something like that where people can put suggestions.
Let's see, someone asked if there was Pat asked if there was a local zero waste store in the area, and Jenny responded in terms of bulk items, Morning Glory Natural Foods, Royal River Natural Foods in Freeport, and Go-Go Refill, which is in South Portland. Jenny, do you know, or Jules, do you know what about Go-Go Refill?
Yep. So they're they're right in Portland. It's a whole zero waste store. But I again wanted to say, Vanessa Berry, Eco Maine, she created this amazing map. It's a beautiful resource and it's very like detailed. So you can look to see where you are in Maine to figure out what the closest retailers are to you and what they offer. So depending on what you need, whether you need meats from a butcher or you need like soap or pantry items or whatever, you can really break it down that way to see what's near you and what you need. Yes, and I see Vanessa hi Vanessa. She said that you can suggest retailers. So it's very interactive. It's something that's going to continue to grow. And you can also add edits as well. Like you can submit edits. So if you know of someone, of a retailer that's now offering zero waste items, or that a retailer that's on the map has changed or whatever, it's going to be something that will be continually evolving.
And is that at Eco Maine or?
It's posted on the Zero Waste Me website, which is zerowasteme.org.
Oh, okay.
And I think we might still have our old map up there, but the new map will be loaded. And there's also, as I said, going to be like a great interview with Vanessa. All sorts of things are going to be added and you'll be able to check all that out.
Great. Kristen is asking where to find compostable dryer sheets.
So you have to read the back of the box. I think it's the Myers brand. If you like, they sell them like right at, big box stores like Hannaford and Target, things like that. Mm-hmm. But just look at the back of the box and it will say compostable on it.
There's some great comments here. Duca says that if you're a Brunswick citizen, there are 2 compost bins at 9 Industry Road where you can just drop off your compost, and there are signs that explain what you can compost. So that's a great thing to know about. Lots of people like there's a link to a bidet that Leza posted that she says it works great. What I'll try to do is take some of these resources and put them into an email and send them around to the folks who are on this call. I just wanted to put in a plug for co-owning large items. We co-own a log splitter with 2 other families, and that's worked out fantastically well because, you know, we're not all using it at the same time, and it just moves around from between the households. And, you know, that's a big investment, but splitting the cost with other families makes huge sense and works really well. So I think co-owning things, or as you said, also, the Resilience Hub in Portland has a tool library where you can take out tools. They also have a repair. I don't know if they're still doing it, but for probably not because of the pandemic. But when conditions allow, they've been doing quarterly repair clinics, and they usually have someone there who's a seamstress and someone who does jewelry repair and someone who does appliance repair, and they can't always fix everything, but it's actually just really fun to go there. Let me see if there are other. Curtis Memorial Library in Brunswick has a library of things, says Jenny, that you can take out. Let's see. Vanessa added that there are hundreds of groups on Facebook for gifting and secondhand items. Check out Buy Nothing. Vanessa also says she throws in a dry towel in her dryer with the rest of her wet clothes to speed up the drying time. And that's a cool idea. So let's see, any other questions from people? We're right at 1 o'clock. So I'll also let people know that we've recorded this, and we'll put it up on our website if you want to send your friends to watch it. And Julie, is it okay to post your PowerPoint along with the recordings as a resource for people to refer back to if they want to remember something?
Sure.
Okay, that'd be great. Great. So I think I'm not seeing any other questions. So thank you so much, Julie. You had all sorts of fantastic ideas and resources. So hopefully people will feel motivated and inspired to try some of them. So thanks so much for sharing your time with us.
Great, anytime. And if you have any questions or think of anything, you can always contact me through the website as well on our contact page.
Great. Thanks everyone for joining us. Take care.